Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the SRC podcast. Joining me, Big M, this week is Mr. Rob Rees and Mr. Joe Wilson. Good evening, lads. How are we doing?
Evening.
All good, gents. All good.
Oh, good.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Very good.
Sadly, we're a man down this week. Bucky, Mr. John Harris, has he's got some work to attend to. So we'll let him off. He is being productive, we've been told. Okay. So straight in, Thursday night, Swansea travelling to Llandudno. I don't think they would have had much hope in, picking up any real match points. It was more about the performance. And, 42-13 finished at Llandudno. But it didn't seem like that type of game to me watching it on the TV. It was very much even contest, and then Llandudno would score try. And then it'd be the same thing again, Llandudno would score try. It doesn't do a credit to what Swansea actually put out on our field. Joe, if you're with us, what were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I think I predicted the scoreline on this one last week being 40 points to 14 in favour of Llandudno, and as it turned out, it was pretty close to that. But that probably didn't reflect actually the way that the game went. I feel like in the last couple of weeks, Swansea, whilst not getting the wins, they've been putting together a little bit more of better defensive sets. And I know the scoreline doesn't reflect it here, but I felt like for large parts of this game, they competed really, really well. I just think Llandudno's ability to mix it up, change the point of attack. It was a very, if you look at the way they scored their tries, there's two more tries. There was a try from a quick tap. There was one where they just pounded the line for about 5 minutes, and the other two were kick returns. I think that it was that variation in attack that probably separated Llandudno apart. But I do kind of feel like Swansea beginning to put patches of play together. They just don't seem to be able to string it together for long enough to have a concerted impact on the opposition so that they can score. And they certainly can't do it over two halves. But I thought Luca Giannini did really well for them, and Josh Phillips is a shining light down there for them as well. I think he's up to fourth in the total point score in the league, and a very good kicking success rate. So there's a couple of shining lights there in that Swansea team, and I feel like coming up to Christmas, they're going to start to click shortly.
Yeah, 100% agree with you there. Swansea are looking like an improving power. Still haven't got that win under the belt, but the performance against Cardiff was much, much improved. Similar again in this game, and what a lot of people will need to try and remember is we've had all that crap with the Ospreys, resting and rotating players. So they did lose, a good couple of boys into the Ospreys 23 and the training squad. So still they're nowhere near, 100% Swansea, and they did, do themselves proud really, because they were in each and every fight that they were. In terms of Llandudno, the talent that they managed to pick up, I know obviously everyone is a feeder from one of the professional regions, barring RGC, but Ellis-Me looked like he was on a training ground. Everything was just so easy for that boy, and when he did cut open Swansea's defence and offload on the floor going down, that sort of skill level, you can't really teach that when you're already in adulthood. That's something that you learn in the early days. Probably actually under 10s is when you start learning that offload in the tackle, especially in Wales, when the contact comes in. And he just done it perfectly. And it's something we see with a lot of the Llandudno players, the ability to get rid of that ball. And, having, a 7-star in Baldwin on the wing as well always helps. Rob, what about you? What caught your eye in this one?
Yeah, I think it was Ellis at fullback. I think was the obvious one to catch the eye. And I think what the Scarlets are going to be enjoying is that competition with him and Jack Davis in the coming years. Obviously, both with Llandudno, and I think it'll be actually interesting at this stage to see how that allocation draws out now as well. it's probably a case of it's going to be a difficult one to work between the Llandovery coaching team and the Scarlets, because obviously they took two young talented players. You're going to want them both, but realistically, you're not going to be able to put them both in a team and play them enough minutes consistently to sort of reap the rewards of what they're going to sow. But I think this is very much a sign, this sort of game of where the scoreline didn't fully reflect the performance of a side that's bedded in and sort of knows what they want to do with a sort of a playing style with Llandovery against a side like Swans, who are still trying to set a basic structure. They can sort of hold it for reasonable amounts of time, but they either let too many sort of phase one attacks slip through, or after you know 5 or 6 phases that they're breaking it down, they're not giving themselves a chance to get over the ball. And that's where that's their strongest area. If they're fully kitted out, we've seen Morgan Morse, Callum Bowden's been in and out the last couple of weeks, Luca Giannini, they've got the players in that back row who can get over the ball. That's where their biggest strength is. They need to start trying to slow this down, just disrupt some of these phases of attack, because if they can't, you can hold out. You're not going to get the penalties. Ultimately, the benefit is going to go with a good attack inside. And as we know, a lot of these SRC sides are good with ball in hand. Cardiff, top of the league, the most 6-pointers this year, got the bonus point last week. Bridgend did the doubles on them the 2 weeks before that. So that's where I think this is probably lying. And I think it'll do Llandovery good as well. First win on their home soil, on the home plastics. So yeah, I think that'll just settle a couple of nerves up at Llandovery as well. And I think we can start to see them progressing up the table now, and that's where we'll sort of see the usual Llandovery sort of performances start to shine through again.
Yeah. Okay. We'll move on to Saturday's game now, and there was one that got a few headlines for a bit of the wrong reason, and we actually had a man at the ground. So Bridgend hosting Ebbw Vale. I don't want you to talk too much about the incident. Just give us a brief overview. We will come to the game. So what exactly was all the fuss about?
There's been a bit of an altercation post match, and it was a bit of a disappointing end, to be honest. There was handbags, referee calls it, penalty misses, more handbags. If anybody was at the game, they would have noticed Adam Jones actually had the red card out in his hand at the sort of the handbag stage. He put it away with 2 players already being red carded in the game, so we could have seen a few more. Some disappointing attitudes, I think, in the tunnel, so to speak, after the game. And I'll be honest, I think it's quite nice that this has been settled between the two clubs. I think the statement set out by Bridgend is quite a good one. It's good to see that this hasn't progressed with a formal complaint to the WRU, but also I know that the sort of the original complaint that went out onto Twitter from the visitors as well, that's now gone from social media. There's no aftermath and afterburn on this one, and I think it's probably important to have a little look at the performance, because I don't think many people would have saw a 6-pointer coming out of this game with the sort of performances and then sort of the form of both sides, especially with it being down at Bridgend, where Ebbw Vale have lost in the last couple of seasons there. So it's not a joyful place always to go.
Yeah, like Bridgend were, on a good run. They'd had 3 wins on the bounce. Obviously, the double over Swansea we've alluded to, and winning at home, away to Aberavon. So this did come as a bit of a shock when we saw that final scoreline. But the game itself, from what I've read and from what you've told us, it was very, very nip tuck. There weren't a lot going on in there. It was
yeah. It was.
Can you remember how many cards there were total?
I think it was 4 yellow cards if we include Evan Hill's couple. Obviously, he then saw red, and Ryan Jenkins saw red. I don't think that Ryan's will be rescinded either, based on the tip tackle that I could see. I haven't seen the replay of it properly, but yeah, it doesn't look to me like that'll be getting pulled. But yeah, the first 40 minutes is very two sides trying to play a lot of good rugby, wasn't quite paying off, which was quite surprising. There was a heavy wind that favoured Ebbw Vale in the first half, didn't really make use of it. There was only probably 2 attacks with ball in hand. One, I think, was well, one was the try. I think, if anyone's seen the highlights, they would have seen that. A nice phase one straight off the top of the line out straight after the first sin bin. So obviously the man advantage took it really well, Rowley out on the far touchline, and was really nicely done. Other than that, there was one where the ball didn't quite fall to Ben Burnell, dribbled between his legs, but there wasn't a lot of attacking Rugby. And I think the point changed. It must have been 5 to 10 minutes into the second half. Ebervale changed it to two props, and that was that. Three maul tries later to add to the maul try they'd already scored in the first half. Whenever a hooker scores a hat trick is always an interesting one. I think the last hooker to score a hat trick was Henry Palmer down at Merthyr last year on the TV. I think, but yeah, it's sort of got into a bit of life. It wasn't exhilarating rugby. It was still drawn out, but I think this was a real nice one to see, a set piece going well, and then Bridgend couldn't deal with it, unfortunately, from their point of view, and that was that. I mean, I think the one try that Joe Franchi scored actually went 70 meters with 5 different mauls, penalising, kick the touch, maul all the way. I think that says it all, that you travel that distance purely in mauls and kicks the touch from a maul, says all you need to know.
Yeah. Penalty try as well in there for Ebbw Vale. Was that exactly the same? Was it the maul causing the problems?
No, them all brought down, and it's one of those ones. I think Ebbw Vale will be disappointed they didn't get another one or two. There was a couple of mauls where they either broke free at the front. Only a couple of players got a bit excited, and actually the last driving line out after Evan Hill had been sent back off, I should say. They actually lost only the second line out of the game at that stage, so they'd be disappointed they couldn't actually wrap up a couple more, I think.
Yeah. So is this a case of Ebbw Vale's rolling maul is one hell of a weapon, or have Bridgend been found out one of their weaknesses they need to work on?
I'm going to say it's probably a bit of both. I think anybody sees this Ebbw Vale rolling maul, you don't do a double overland every and sort of perform the way they did this week without the rolling maul. And I think it's definitely going to be interesting to see how that fares now. I'll say the next couple of weeks, the next 2 games, obviously either side of the break with Quins and Newport coming up is going to be a nice test for that. But Bridgend, for me, just lack a little bit of size up front. They're not a huge side. They move about the pitch really well, but I think if they can get a few big lumpers in there, that's where they need, to really try and target. It sounds ridiculous. They got some decent size front rowers. I think it's having the bodies behind that, and I also think it helped Ebbw Vale play in best part of an hour with 3 locks, with Jack Pope, former Bridgend, playing at blindside. It wasn't until Ben Main come onto the pitch that the Jack moved into the second row and they went down to 2.
Yeah. Someone on the Bridgend front that seemingly known his way to the trial this year is Macaulay Rowley, 3 tries in 5 appearances. So, you want to get that boy with his ball in his hands more. Joe, we haven't heard off you for this one, but any different views coming from you?
No, I kind of felt Ebbw Vale were going to be able to cause Bridgend some problems on that grass pitch, with the weather being a little bit damper as it was sort of back end of last week. I definitely couldn't see an Ebbw Vale 6-pointer coming out of this, but it was quite a strange game, I think, to the outsider, just with the level of cards. It was so disrupted the game, and I think the Ryan Jenkins red card, which I think you're right, Rob, I can't see that being rescinded for what was quite reckless, really. I think that just put Bridgend on the back foot pretty much. It was a minute 20-ish, I think he gets the red card. It was quite early on.
2 minutes they played with 14 men after the red card.
It's so difficult at this level with the pace on the pitch then to compete, and if the way Ebbw Vale play, they can sucker you all in to defend that maul, and then they spin it wide and get it to the gas man. There was always going to be space. That said, they didn't do a lot of that, and I think the surprising thing for me was Bridgend must have known, looking at the way Ebbw Vale play, that the maul was coming at them, yet they seemed to have an
What
inability to defend it entirely.
what surprised me was Bridgend spent the majority of the second half not competing in the air. Now, this was after a couple of maul tries, heavy success, penalties. And they just, even after the penalty try, they still weren't jumping up. They clearly weren't stopping it once it was down, but they just didn't seem to want to try and compete and steal it in the air. And I think when they did that early doors, there was one Evervale lineup went askew early, and the last line out of the game, they got a little bit of success out of it. But that's the bit that baffled me was that they didn't seem to adapt and change to targets. They sort of resigned themselves to trying to stop it, and it just wasn't happening.
Yeah,
and I think I think that whole sort of outlook on the game probably impacted them. You know, they get the Ryan Jenkins red card, you get the Evan Hill 2 yellows turn into a red. I just sensed there was a hell of a lot of frustration from Bridgend at that point. You know, they were getting out muscled out of the game, and there was nothing that they could do about it. And the response was just to try and create a little bit of niggle. But fair play to Evervale. You know, they served one in at Cardiff. The pack went really well down with us. And 6 tries, a hat trick for Joe Frankie. Outstanding.
Yeah, four tries and the 6 pointers. Because it's ideal, really, to keep on Cardiff's toes.
Yeah. So Evervale finished our game 34-18, 2 6-pointers on the bounce. They are going really strong at the minute. We'll come straight back to you, Joe, now. Cardiff winning 31-14 at home against Aberravon. Wasn't always plain sailing, though, 14 all at half-time. But the one point I'm going to make in this is that Cardiff have been scoring for fun, like literally. And we're now at game 6, and we still had 3 new scorers from them get over the try line. You know, I'm getting a bit fed up sorting out my score sheets, adding all these Cardiff players in. Just have someone who's already had the try. Just have another one. It makes it easier for me. So what are we making of this one?
Yeah, I think the first half sort of Aberravon really set their stall out. There was a really, really good, well taken try to open up scoring. Ed Dunford at 10, chipping over the top. I think Sam Jardine collects, and it's just one pass with the full back to beat, and Luke Davis goes in for the try. A really well taken try. And at 14 all at half time, you're sort of looking at that thinking, Christ, you know, they could cause an upset here. They're definitely one of those teams that have got a very, very quick back row and a very quick back line to cause teams trouble. So I think Aberravon were thriving on that 4G surface at Cap. And the thing that stood out for me from both sides, we had 2 pretty young 10s on show in Ed Dunford and Harry Wild, and they were really to the fore. You know, it was a really good game to watch because their decision making under pressure, their vision, their ability to take the ball to the line and to get that ball out the back and not hit the pod that were right there. There was just some really, really good decision making on view. They both kicked really well. There was good variation in their kicking. So I think if you're a rugby purist, it was a really good game to watch. I just think Cardiff being at home, it probably sort of played out the way that they wanted. And I suspect maybe a bench there for Aberravon that couldn't come on and make the same impact as the Cardiff subs was probably ultimately the difference as the legs began to tire, and it's a fast track to play on. I think they probably just sort of struggled then in the second half a little bit to keep up. But 2 really good sides going at it. Really good game to watch. Really good game to watch.
Yeah. First game this season, the Cardiff haven't changed the number 10, so you know, nice to get a bit of consistency there. In terms of Aberravon, they've been making 3 changes. Not all of them. Some of them positional in their 15s, but there were 7 in there for this match. So you can kind of argue maybe a bit of inconsistency in selection impacted them in that second half. But, you know, we haven't got a regular Aberravon guy here to really tell us. So, Rob, what can you make of this one?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing, and I think the abandoned Newport game has told us this about Aberravon, is they've definitely got enough to stick in with sides. It was close pretty much all the way till the last play against the good Evervale side. I thought they're actually the better side in that Newport game. They probably missed a couple of chances to sort of take um take the sort of the lead into the halftime, albeit would have been abandoned anyway. I think it's that inexperience in the squad. It's a very young squad. The lack of depth probably is starting to hurt that 60 minutes on that final quarter when you got a side under a bit of pressure. You want people to come on and be able to relieve that or change it up if you are struggling, and they just don't seem to have that at the moment. I do think that Scott Del Neville, Welsh under-20, he's going nice and strongly down at fullback for him. And I think he's going to be one of the sort of the linchpins they really use, especially if Ed Dunford can sort of get his time. He's been really impressive, even in some difficult conditions, in terms of how he's managing the game. His game head is really, really good, and he's seeing what you need to be seeing. He just needs a bit more of a platform to build with, and then they just need to get them backs firing because they've got some experience throughout that back line. I mean, Frankie Jones in midfield, over 100 caps now this season. He's passed that mark. So yeah, I think that's what we're seeing is that little bit of a drop off is the lack of experience slash depth where they've had such a large turnover and an influx of young players.
Yeah. So Cardiff, third 6-point of the season. That tells you all you need to know about their attack. Abravan, I mean, I know John has said it. They're looking good, but you're struggling to see where their wins are coming from. They've only had that one this season. So, all the best to them going forward. Next up, Carmarthen Quins travelled north to RGC. Now, I know when we spoke about this last week, I actually predicted an RGC win. I'm glad I did, and I didn't change it. But when I saw the Quins starting lineup, I saw Carolyn Tuipulotu and Sam O'Connor both in that starting pack. And I started tweaking. Honestly, I know, Rob, you said previously, we're making these predictions, except for the Thursday night, and even sometimes the Thursday night, without seeing the team sheet. So when we see the players are being dropped down and loaded in, it's starting to make us, go squeaky. But yeah, one player I will say that Quins probably did miss, and he isn't a player, he's a Kevin Nathan player, is Ali Thomas. His leadership, in the last few games, he was instrumental in that Cardiff and Pontypool home win. Wouldn't be surprised to see him come back in again against Ebbw Vale. But, that is what it is. RGC, though, they're getting wins this season consistently. I know, Joe, you're a big fan. After I spoke with Saul, I believe in RGC. That's still going in my mind. So, Rob, can you walk me through this?
Yeah, I think RGC have shown us that they're managing games. I think that's what we all sort of decided upon when we made the predictions at the start of the year, was the RGC dangerous backline, probably don't have enough up front. Are they really a sort of a close enough unit to be seeing out games and staying with sides? The answer to that question we are finding out is yes. I think Quins are at a bit of an unknown. They're probably in that similar category to the Aberavons Bridgends, where you don't really sort of know in sort of, and I talk about those sort of sides in years gone by, in terms of which side may be turning up. A couple of, quality Scarlets, dropping in. Does it sometimes help that they get in such a high turnover of these sort of players? And obviously we've seen Tom Curry back in, endless sort of rotation with Tom Phillips dropping in and out the second and back row. Does it help them, or does it sort of drop them away from a bit of cohesion, which a side like sort of Quins can always utilize because they're not the most strong squad in terms of depth at every position? But I think you're right. I think Aled Thomas is making the big difference. You can see since he's come back, he's that marshal that they need. He's keeping them in the games. And RGC are just sort of doing exactly the same. They've had Danny Cross come back, Billy McBride he's running the show up there, and that's only good for Josh and the team up there, because they're playing a good brand of rugby, which is always nice. Good to see over 900 people watching the game up there as well. That's always great to see a good crowd at a sort of a game at this sort of level. So yeah, I think it's two sides in a building phase. I think one sort of knows where they want to be. One is hoping to get to where they want to be. And I think RGC may have just pulled it through with that sort of additional bit of vision where that Josh Leach and the team up there, they just know what they want. they've gone out, got the players they need to, and they're really doing it well.
Yeah, I know a lot is being made of RGC and being that sort of fifth region at the minute. One thing people probably do need to understand is their player pool is limited in terms of numbers. The population in North Wales is nothing compared to the south, and it's the breadth and the width of the actual landscape there. You're traveling miles and miles to get to anywhere. If you think coming down to Carmarthenshire and Pembrokeshire, you're driving around a fair bit. Going north is even worse. It's unbelievable. So, Joe, over to you on this one. But any thoughts?
Yeah, I predicted a win for RGC here at home on their carpet. They're a very fast playing team, the way that they want to play, and in Billy McBride, they've got a 10 that knows exactly how to get the best out of what they're trying to achieve. I haven't seen the offloading numbers, but the way they play the game is so fast. Once they make that line break, it seems no matter where the line break's made from, it's on for them, and they've got license to play. It's a little bit like the Drovers last year. Once the line break's made, even if they've come out of their 22, once they've got behind that defensive set, they don't really want to see a ruck again. And that's how fast they're playing. And they've got a good core there that they're building the team around. I mean, Ethan Fackrell, I think he's not long out of 20s. He's just dominating people in the tackle area, which is fantastic to see for such a young kid. You got Sam Stoddard, who's up on 6 tries, putting away the opportunities that they're creating, and Billy McBride controlling things at 10 for them. So I just think they're a real handful for a side to sort of travel up there and get to grips with, because it's a long old time in the bus, and then all of a sudden you're playing this super fast game on a 4G pitch. So I think a lot of teams are going to struggle when they go up there. And then in addition to that, I think to your point about how it's all performing underneath with Llanbriflo as well in the college leagues, they're beginning to see some big performances. They beat Coleg Cigar last weekend. So whatever they're doing, I think they have been caught behind the 8 ball a little bit, but I definitely think you'll see things start to improve over the next 4 or 5 years up there, for sure.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned Sam Stoddard there. He has been one real shining light, and I know we can talk about Tom Bowen and how fast he is and how good of a player he's going to become. He scored a hat-trick in 2 games, which is absolutely brilliant. He's had a couple of quiet games as well, but you see Sam Stoddard, he's scored over 4 games now. He seems to be causing damage, consistently through games. So that's a massive, massive asset that RGC have got. And quite frankly, for this system to work the way it is, I'd like to see boys like Sam Stoddard, like back in the day when Aaron Warren was putting in 13, 14 tries a season. These boys need to be, allowed to try and step up, find a way to do it, because that is the purpose of a development league, whether they're 19, 20, or if they're 25, 26. If they're showing they've got that ability there should be a pathway for them to make it, or at least try and make it a career. So this brings us on to our final game. Probably, I think it is actually the closest game that we had all weekend. Pontypool hosting Newport. And yeah, I was really full of belief in Newport, but I was proven very, very wrong. Pontypool coming out 17-14. It was quite late, that final try for them to get them over the line. But they really, really showed how good of a team they can be in this one. So, Rob, straight to you. First thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's one of those ones. It's sort of the amount of sort of senior players and the allocations in both sides made everyone go, "Ooh, this is going to be a really tasty tie," and it sort of did live up to that. I don't think Newport hit the stride they wanted to, and Pontypool won the battle up front. But ultimately, despite it being the hooker who scores the winning try, it was actually done in quite a nice attacking rugby. Was it, phase 3, 4, get the ball out, superb pickup on what's a difficult pitch. It's heavy, it's autumnal now as well. He's picked it up superbly, knowing the pressure. He knocks that on. That's game, right? Scrum, Newport get the ball, just feed it back, kick it off the park, Newport take the win. So I mean, he's shown his experience despite him being such a young player to finish that one off. And yeah, I think it's good to see. I mean, Morgan Lloyd's first appearance back at Pontypool makes an absolute hell of a difference. I mean, for me, their best player last season by far. He just pulls the strings, knows when to slow it down. When the forwards are doing well, he knows what to do. And I think, Joe Davis was in there as well, one for the Dragons fans coming back from a bit of an injury. He had a good spell. And again, that sort of big player that I've been mentioning, some of the sides sort of need. It's that sort of character. You've got him doing the hard yards, the experience, the knowledge of what to do in the little scenarios, the little battles, especially on the ground. And yeah, I think it's opened it up very interestingly now, because we're at the stage that even if Newport win their game in hand, they still won't go into the top two. I think this is what makes it sort of interesting. Now we've closed that gap right down now. There's not one team right ahead, sort of thing. And yeah, credit to Pontypool. They're starting to look like a good sign settled on paper as well.
Yeah, I mean, in all fairness, what they managed to do, there was 8 new men in that 15. There was a couple who came off the bench. Kelvin Williams, Scott Matthews. But a lot of them, to make that many changes and to have a performance like that against what is considered a top 2 side in this league is mightily impressive. So, Joe, over to you. Why couldn't Newport shut this one out?
Yeah, it's one of those, isn't it? I think John and I were sort of getting quite animated and excited about the fact that we were looking forward to an old blood and thunder Gwent derby last week, and I think that's what we had. I think the two sides went at each other in a really physical way. It was 7-3 to Newport at half time, so that gives you an idea of just how physical this game was. Pooler started really well. I think they were really happy with the way they started the game. It was kind of the middle 40 minutes where the game sort of, ebbed and flowed and probably got away from them a little bit. And then they finished sort of really strongly again with Sam Scarf getting another try. So I think Tyrone Morris probably summed it up for Newport, didn't he? I know he sort of alluded to the fact they were really inaccurate in the first half, Newport, even though they were leading 7-3. But I think they baked 3 tries in that first half. They had great opportunities to score more tries. And then I can't remember seeing them go beyond 2 phases more than a handful of times in the entire game. And at this level, with the way that these sides are, that you have to be able to string sort of 5 or 6 phases together on multiple occasions just to really stress size. And Newport really didn't do that for long enough periods in the game to trouble Pooler. And I think that added to the fact that I know the stats are out about the league today or yesterday. They've got Morgan Allen and Dan Hill, who are just, carrying and winning collisions. They're the top 2 in the league. And that tells you everything about what Pooler are going to bring to a game. And that's exactly what they were able to sort of finish off with and do in this game. They sort of, I think they emptied the bench a little bit in the second half. Ponty brought on another 3 or 4 players in that pack, and it proved vital because it got them home and it got that late try for them. So it was everything that I thought it was going to be. I didn't think it was going to be a big score. I had Ponty by 1, and in the end I had it by 3. So cracker, enjoyed it.
So that's all the results from this past week's worth of SRC Rugby, which leads us right into it halfway. So if you like what you're listening to, or you're just listening anyway, give us a like, follow, share, subscribe. Helps us massively. Give us a comment. We want some engagement going. Okay, we now go on to this week's fixtures, the last of the block before, was it a 4-week break? So Pontypool are travelling to Swansea. Swansea are in the position again where they don't know exactly what players they're going to have available. So their squad isn't going to be named until probably late afternoon or mid-afternoon on the actual Thursday, hopefully when you're listening to this. But we do have the Pontypool side. So there's been a couple of changes in there. Pat Lewis and Cam Davis is coming off the bench into the 15. Johan Duggan is back on the wing for Matthew Powell, and Meek is obviously back at 10, which where he's been doing his best work this season. So, Rob, you've got a bit of history with Meek being down at Airbu for the season. Tell us about this game. But are we seeing this Swansea resurgence? Is it going to peak in this game, or are we still going to be waiting?
No, I think you've just summed up where Swansea are struggling is if you're not finding out or not 100% on who your 23 is, especially your 15 by sort of Wednesday night, you can't settle your team. You can't get in. Players can't get that mindset of what they're going to be doing. Elite players start running things through their head before they physically do it, right? There's a reason that when you see top class athletes at this more sort of things at the Olympics and places like that, they are running the 100 meters. They're doing that 50-meter freestyle in the pool in their head before they start. Even at this sort of level, boys want to start knowing what they're doing on a game day. They want to start thinking about, I want to try and get a big hit in on that first kick off and stuff like that. And if you don't know what's happening, you're always going to struggle. I just think, Pontypool are sort of the perfect side to pull apart someone like Swansea. It was so attritional last week. They've got the 7 Dragons, in the match day 23, all in the right sort of spaces, mixed in with a real good balance of youthful local talent and experienced players. As you said, Morgan Allen, Dan Hill, probably some of their best players this sort of season. And Kieran Meek going back to 10, only going to add to that. There's a nice battle at 10 with Josh Phillips, presuming that he does start, which I can't imagine he won't unless there's physically a problem or he's unavailable there. But I think this firmly gets one up front. I think Swansea haven't been winning the collisions. They didn't do it at Llandovery. I can't see them doing it this week, and that's why I'm seeing this as a 6-pointer for Pontypool on the S4C TV lights.
Yeah, I'm not going much different with it. I'm going to come back to Bridgend in this one now, and I'm going to give them all the credit because what they've been doing this season is they've been putting the Ospreys logo next to the players that are coming from the academy, and Pontypool have started doing the same thing. I'm liking it. Let's get everyone involved in it.
100%.
I'm fully with you. Pontypool, they're not going. It's not going to be a walk in the park. It's never a walk in the park. No game is, but they are going to be fairly comfortable come that final whistle in my eyes. So, Joe, over to you. Anything extra to add, and who's winning this?
No, again, I don't think Swansea are quite at the position where they're gonna be getting the win. I do think the sides are sort of equally matched. I don't think Swansea are getting smashed up front by sides, and I think Pooler will tend to rely on in a heavy way on that big pack. But I don't see Swansea having enough defensively to stop Pooler scoring 4 tries, which is ultimately what will happen here. So I've got Pontypool to win by 10 to 14 points here away from home, and I just think they'll be buoyed by this week's performance against Newport, and Swansea with the shining lights they've got. They just need to do more without the ball, I think, and work out just have a real clear sense of how they're going to get the ball back, because that's not clear to me at the moment, and I think they're just really struggling in that sense. So a pool of 5-pointer I've got.
Yeah. Okay, so that's our Thursday night game sorted. We're all looking forward to watching this one. On to Saturday's action now. Where to start? Let's go alphabetical. Llandovery are travelling to Aberafan. Oh, I mean, we've seen Llandovery start to really shift the ball now, really show that they are a multifaceted team, especially in attack. And if they get some of the players that they have been, Morgan Jones, Ed Scragg, Ellis Mee, if these players are involved, and, I'm looking through the side, they had a 17-year-old Dom Costa. If he is one boy you want to look out for, he looked awesome for Wales under 18s last year. He's made his debut, and, there's still a lot more to come from this Llandovery side, and I can't see past them. I don't quite think it's going to be a 6-pointer because, like we've already discussed, Aberafan, they stay in the fight. They might not be getting over the line, but they're staying in the fight for majority of the games. So I'm going for the Drovers. Rob, you get the next pick on this.
I'm going to follow you on the Drovers, and similar sort of feeling around the margin. I don't think Llandovery have hit their stride enough to be getting 6 points out of this. I could see it being quite a high scoring affair, sort of both sides getting a try scoring bonus point the way that sort of the attacking rugby is. I just feel that Aberavon are lacking just a little bit too much in sort of a defensive structure for me at the moment. You can't let in simple rugby. Now, they did at the end of last year. I know Jason Hyatt highlighted it as one of his work-ons. It's always going to be a struggle when you've got a turnover of players and young players still learning the craft at this sort of level, making that sort of step up. And I think it was Joe alluded to it earlier, where once Llandovery break that collision, they're not looking for rucks. They're looking for the offloads. We've seen it when they got that win against Newport. You know, the Leary's try. They break the line the first time, and there wasn't another ruck. It's man gets tackled, that ball's coming up. And I think this is where Aberavon just need that bit of midfield structure now, hold that defensive line. I think if they can get a bit of a defensive blitz going, that's probably their best opportunity. But Llandovery've got the firepower. I think it's just who you pick now. You know, Lee Davis at fullback, you know, young Baldwin on the wing has been absolutely fantastic. Elan Phillips has scored tries from both centre and on the wing this season. You know, they're not relying on the old heads, the Warren boys, Reese. You know, they're still playing well, but they're not relying on those players. They've got so much young talent in that back line that's firing. I can't see Aberavon quite holding on to the tails.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I can say in terms of the fullback situation with Jack Davis and Ellis Mee, both of them can play on the wing. So, I mean, I'm looking at the back three options in Llandovery right now, and with the addition of me, you know, you've got Jack Davis, you've got Aaron Warren, you've got Harry Dole as well, who we haven't seen much of, Elan Phillips, you know, Cian Abraham's not back from injury yet either. So, you know, they are probably one of the most stacked sides in the league, which obviously it goes to show when you've won it 2 years on the bounce. So, Joe, are you going to go Llandovery as well, or are you expecting some sort of an upset in this one?
Well, I bet against Aberavon at home, one of the first 2 rounds of the competition, and they proved me wrong. I definitely expect Aberavon to compete for 50, 60 minutes. I'm expecting them to score at least or get to 3 tries. I think the difference for me is Llandovery are just beginning to get all the players that have been injured back. They've had a good away win, followed it up with a good home win. And I think the thing that stood out last week for me was the variation in the tries scored. And that points to a side that's beginning to click. 2 from maul, a quick tap on the 5, and they pound. 2 kick returns. Basically, they go open side and return it. And they finish off with another try where they're pounding the line. So I just feel like Llandovery are beginning to click, and they've got real gas. And that combined with what Rob was alluding to, that creativity they've got, that offload game, I think this will be a 6-pointer, and I think it'll be a 6-pointer to Llandovery.
There we go. Okay, next up, we've got Newport hosting RGC. So, Newport obviously going to be really upset, you know, losing out to Pontypool. RGC haven't travelled all that great, but am I right in thinking this is going to be on a pitch that they like? So, Joe, you had a little chuckle to yourself for this, so tell me what you're thinking.
What's the surface going to be? Is it the 4G, or is it going to be that 1 metre in goal area grass pitch we saw the other week?
I don't know. I'm assuming it's going to be at the Newport Stadium again. I mean, is that where all the games have been played so far?
I think so. For me, RGC are not learning quickly enough how to play on grass, which sounds bizarre, but they're just such a different side on that carpet. And they've travelled a little bit like the French teams of the 90s. You literally don't know which team's going to turn up. If they click, they could win it. It's just if they turn up. And as hard as it is to go to RGC up north and do all that travelling and win, it's proving the case that RGC can't travel themselves. I'm fully expecting Newport and Tyrone Morris to be extremely upset with last week. And I think Newport will score 4 or 5 tries here, and RGC 2 or 3 tries. That's what I'm predicting. So I think this will be a nice 5-pointer for Newport.
There we go. Rob, over to you. Do RGC have a chance in this one?
They do have a chance. I think their game plan, it needs to be very similar to what Llandovery did to Newport on exactly the same pitch. And that is, it has to be quick, but it has to be accurate in that phase 1 into phase 2. Do I think they're going to pull it off? No. I think Newport are going to start trying to control things. I think losing to Llandovery, losing to Pontypool last few weeks, they've sort of been brought back down to earth. Not that they've been thinking that they've been pulling away with things. They haven't performed excessively well this season. I think that the Tyrone Morris has been quite vocal that he hasn't got them to a place where they need to be at the moment. And I think this is one of the prime opportunities. I think we're going to see a similar game to the Ebervale RGC game from a couple of weeks back, where the forwards do a lot of the hard work, and we know that Newport backline have got enough to finish. Interestingly, I think Newport's biggest question for me at the moment is probably around fly half. I don't think Carwyn Penny is a fly half. He's more suited to full back, and I think you can see the massive difference when Matt O'Brien is lining up in that fly half jersey to when he's missing. So I think little team news bits like that could be the difference in Newport wrapping up a bonus point here. But yeah, for me, Newport win.
Oh, this is a boring week. We've all gone for Newport, all gone for Pontypool. Thankfully, John gave us his predictions earlier, so he did vote for Aberavon. So thank you for breaking that one up for us, Pat. Cardiff, Bridgend now. And as Joe likes to point out, I do everything in my power not to back Cardiff. But unfortunately, I've got to go with them, again this week. I just don't think there's enough in this Bridgend side, and I don't know how they're gonna.
He's killing him. He's choking on his words as they're coming out.
I don't know what sort of reaction we're going to get from Bridgend. It's either going to be a step up again and there's going to be a lot of fire, or it's going to be a bit more reined in, I think, like control yourself sort of thing. So, bearing that in mind, how free-flowing Cardiff are, I can't go against Cardiff. Joe, your team, I've already got you down as a Cardiff win, so give us a bit more insight into this one.
Yeah, and again, without really knowing the team that's been picked up from Cardiff, I think there's been a few worrying signs from Bridgend the last couple of weeks for me, which, when added to something we identified week 1, which was they're pretty lightweight in that type 5. The surface will suit them. That'll be a great leveler, and I expect the 2 back lines to go hammer and tong at each other. I think it'll be a really fast and exciting game with a lot of line breaks. I'm just expecting that Cardiff pack to have too much dominance up front for Bridgend. And that added to the fact that it's very difficult when you produce a performance like Bridgend did last week at home to Ebervale, where it was just really ill-disciplined. There's going to be some enforced changes from that game because of the red card and then the 2 yellows and a red. Like you say, it goes one or two ways. They're either super, super disciplined and maybe play within themselves, or they can pitch it just right and they come through and they're competitive. But I haven't seen enough from Bridgend to suggest they're going to be anything other than a little bit ill-disciplined again. So I've got Cardiff scoring somewhere around the 40-point mark. I haven't quite made my mind up yet, and I think Bridgend will get about 3 tries. That's my gut feel at the moment.
There we go. You're expecting a 6-pointer then. So, Rob, I got a feeling you're going Cardiff as well. So, come on, bud, give me some belief in Bridgend in this one. Can you do it for me?
Nah, it's Cardiff again. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a clean sweep going on here. But yeah, I think the kicking game is going to be an interesting battle, and that's going to be an in for Bridgend this week. I think the surface lends itself to the likes of Ben Burnell and Ed Howley to really get stuck in. What was noticeable against Ebervale was they were playing a very, very narrow defensive line, but they were spreading quick. It was, if anyone watches American football, it was spread offense from a very quick tuck. So yeah, that's going to be the interesting one. Is sort of who Cardiff put at 10. Obviously, there's been a bit of inconsistency around that throughout the season. Could make for an interesting battle. Obviously, Bridgend are not going to want to give the likes of Goodchild, Bowen, Derry Cross too much ball, but they're the sort of players that can put it in the space and in the gaps. And as I sort of said earlier, that it's a lightweight pack that likes moving around. They back row especially, and the likes of Zach Driscoll and well for Llewellyn, they're really looking good in the loose. It's just more sticking to the structure, giving the back some platform to work with. And we know what they can do from the Swansea game that was televised. They can play some really good rugby. They just need to slow it down a little bit, think about what they're doing, and build a product for what will likely be Harvey Nash and Ben Bonnell to work with, I imagine, at 9 and 10.
There we
But
go.
yeah.
That brings us on to our last game, Carmarthen Quins at home to Ebbw Vale. And I know I touched on it earlier, saying about Aled Thomas possibly being back. He had played for Kev Nathan away to Ponteberm this week, and they played at Ponteberm again in the Cup this Saturday. So I'm not sure that he might be available for this one. So that does change it slightly without knowing the squads, obviously. Carmarthen undefeated at home. I'm seeing a nice brand of rugby when they get to play it. Getting these parachute players, will help that. And looking further up, knowing that the Scarlets are playing Zebra on the Friday night, same as they played Friday last week, and then Quins had a couple of parachute. I'm expecting pretty much the same. I might even go for an extra boy or two possibly coming in because they need game time. Especially going into this November break, you can't be going 4, 5, 6 weeks out of the game. It's basic. I'm liking Quins. I'm liking what I'm getting undefeated at home. I've already said. Yeah, I'm back in Quins. So, Rob, I'm going to make you wait now. I'm going to make you wait to talk up your own team. Joe, am I deluded?
No, I think the one thing that stands out about the Ebbw Vale team, rightly so this season, is that pack. They're huge. They're aggressive. They've got a great line-out ball function. That said, I think Carmarthen Quins are probably one of the few packs in the league that can match them, both for size and mass, and for that attacking maul prowess. And I think the two facets that swing it in Carmarthen's favour for me are the fact that they're at home, and I think the Quins backs maybe just edge Ebbw Vale's backs. I think they've got a tiny bit more gas out wide, and I think that's going to be telling. We're in the wet part of the season, so the packs are definitely going to have a massive influence. But I just feel Quins at home are a different proposition. They lost last week, so they'll be keen to put that right. So I'm going for a Quins win, but I'm not seeing much in it. 2 to 4 points, something like that. I think it'll be a tight old affair.
Oh wow! I really didn't expect that. I'm quite happy with that result. Thank you very much.
Well, it hasn't happened yet.
I'm taking it. I'm taking it. So we all know what's going to happen. Rob is either going to back Ebbw Vale, or is it going to be?
No, I think it's going to be a much closer tie than what a lot of people may be expecting, especially with a couple of recent 6-pointers from Ebbw Vale. I do think it will be a win for the visitors. And I think the sort of game that it'll definitely be is going to be that forward game. There's a lot of big boys in that Quins pack. It's going to be crucially sort of contested. But I think Ebbw Vale have got a couple of players that are going to be missing with shoulder injuries. Some key players at 9 and 13. You've got Ethan is going to be missing. John Evans looks likely to be out as well following an injury early doors last week. So I think we're going to see a similar pattern from the visitors as we saw last week. Very nip and tuck close. One thing I'm interested to see is how Jason Strange plays around with the pack. Ryan Jenkins should be an enforced change unless they don't get his disciplinary procedure done on time. So I could easily see the likes of Lewis Young coming in, who started the season really, really strongly with ball in hand, but hasn't had huge game time of late. And then same with the props. It'd be interesting. I think Luke Garrett and Adam Court will definitely be starting this game, giving themselves that platform from the start, because you can't afford to start slowly against a Quinn side that will be controlled, even if it's only up front.
Well, there we have it. That's, I think, what was that, 2 or 3 clean sweeps? It's not very interesting in predicting league this week. Just for anyone who's actually trying to follow that, I will be, showing next week after this first block exactly how many we have been getting right and how many more we've been getting wrong. So, as always, thank you, boys, for joining me. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and thank you to everyone listening. We hope to hear you all again next week. Bye, guys.
Cheers up.
Cheers, boys. Take care.